Okay, so we're gonna do block 26 is what I played around with some of the other blocks we hadn't picked before because I didn't want to keep like just moving the schedule, and just found a new block that I thought would fit in well with kind of the style that would work either for a washcloth or as part of the baby blanket. So I have one finished here. Let me share my screen. So again, this is block 26 from the Annie's sampler crochet pattern that we've been using. So let's see if it shares. Hey, look at that. And it's on the other side. How did that get turned around? Let me just flip the camera. That's okay, we can do it this way. You can see. Zoom in. So this is what the block ends up looking like. And it is a combination of double crochets and triple crochets and single crochets in between. So what you end up with is these here. This is the only tricky part here, is you're using triple crochets and you are doing some in front and some behind, which is not hard, but a little tricky. So that's what I'm going to kind of focus on today, is how to do those. And in working it out, I did come up with some recommendations, and I am going to, when I post this video, I am going to give you a link to this PDF, to a PDF of my notes, so that you don't have to copy this the way this is. A couple things I found, and we'll look at the pattern in a second, but I found writing it out this way was really, really helpful, because you're really only repeating 2 rows over and over again, but you're essentially doing most of the work from the wrong side. So I found myself getting confused as to what row I was actually on. So I found this was a really nice way to do it. And then I could just check off, and then you do a repeat, and you're done. So this was, I found an easy way to do it. And in class this morning, people agreed. So I was like, okay, we're going to go ahead and do that. So I will post this as a PDF, so you'll have access to this along with my little recommendations for it as we go through. All right. So I'm just going to have that up here so I can respond to it. So this is the one that I'm doing for the baby blanket in the River Washed from Sheep Just. And I think it's going to look nice next to our other ones here. I think it's going to blend in. I didn't want anything too holy. It still has a nice structure to it, so I think it's going to fit in well with the others. Okay. All right. So again, block 26. And now I'm doing this in a washcloth version. This is going to be a new cotton that we're going to be carrying, a worsted weight cotton that I wanted to try out. And I thought this would be a perfect way to do it. Is doing it for a dishcloth here. It crochets wonderfully. And we only have some of the colors are back ordered, so they're not sending it all, but we did happen to get this color in, which I really liked. All right, so this one starts with you do your chain, and then you do 2 rows of single crochet. In the pattern, rows 3 and 4, I'm going to refer to this because it's just easier than showing you the pattern. Rows 3 and 4 are the same row. The instructions tell you to do a single in row 1, a row of singles in row 2, and then 3 or 4, you do the row with the triples in it. And then rows 5 and 6 are the same. It's 2 rows of single crochet. And that's your whole repeat, is you do rows 3 and 4, you do rows 5 and 6, and then you repeat them again. So row 7 and 8 is the same as row 3 and 4. 9 and 10 are the same as rows 5 and 6. So you do the repeat again. You have 4 total repeats of the pattern. The rows that have, so the singles we don't need to talk about, but the rows that have the triple in, the pattern notes tell you, and some of my stitches came out, so I'm just going to quickly do my single across here to finish, that you begin the rows with the triple with a chain 3, and that counts as a double crochet. And that can have different meanings in a pattern. I mean, you count it as a double crochet, which is fine. In this particular pattern, though, it means a couple of things. And let me get across here so I can show you. We did have someone, and I'll include this in the PDF that will be linked, that wanted to make the block bigger. So if you want to make your block bigger, it's a 12 stitch repeat. So she added a whole other section of this, so her block will be just a little bit bigger. All right, so on the triple rows, you start with a chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And you're now working on the right side. So my first recommendation is after you do your 2 rows of single, mark your right side with a stitch marker so that you know whether you're working on a right side or a wrong side row. Try to get that to stay. Okay. So your first row of each, when you're doing the row twice, you're starting it on the wrong side, which it initially was confusing to me because you always think you start on the right side, but this one you start on the wrong side. All right, this counts as a double crochet already. And then the pattern tells you to do 3 more double crochets, but it doesn't tell you where to put the double crochet. Since this is already counting as a double crochet, I am not going to put a double crochet in the first stitch. So my next 3 double crochets will be in the next 3 stitches. So 1, 2, 3. Okay. These rows begin and end with 4 double crochets. And since our chain 3 counts as a double, we just have to add 3 doubles. Okay. All right, so there's that. Hold on, my stitch markers didn't get moved with me and I need those. Hold on. Okay. Now, here's the only tricky part, and it's not even hard to understand. It's just a little physically tricky for some people. So the other recommendation I have is to use, if you're having trouble, these little slip-on stitch markers. Since our chain 3 counts as a double crochet, it means a couple of things, like I said. It means you're not going to put a double crochet in the very first stitch because your chain 3 is the very first stitch. You might want to mark, if you have trouble recognizing the end of your row, a stitch marker in the top of your chain 3, so 1, 2, 3, so that when you're coming back, you know that that's where your last stitch has to go for your pattern to work out. Some people don't have to mark their rows, their beginning stitches, but if you're somebody who has trouble recognizing the top of a chain as the last stitch of a row, then go ahead and put a stitch marker in there, okay? Now we're gonna do our triples. The pattern has us skipping 2 stitches. So we're gonna skip this stitch here, and we're gonna skip this stitch here, and we're gonna put a triple in the next one. A triple is 2 yarn overs. Skip 1, skip 2, go in here, grab the yarn and come up, and you should have 4 loops on your hook. I wish it would stop zooming in and out, sorry. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. That's the triple. You can have triples and doubles in the same row and have them be the same height because this triple is leaning. So it won't change the height of your row. If we were putting a triple in the very next stitch, it would be taller, but since we're skipping stitches and they're leaning, they end up being the same height. And then we make a second triple in the very next stitch. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. Okay, so now we have skipped 2 stitches and we've made 2 triples. Now the directions have us putting, the next part is to put 2 triples into the 2 skipped stitches that we left. So here's one skipped stitch. And I'm going to mark it, and I'm going to show you why in a minute. Let me get it in there. Just going to slip that marker through, and I'll slip a marker through the second one as well. Okay. They want you to do 2 triples in those 2 skip stitches from the back. All right. So we're not going to cross into the front. We want to go behind these 2 triples. So here's where I found the easiest way to do it is to fold the 2 triples you've done, fold them to the front so that now you're working at the back. And because I've marked those 2 skip stitches, they're really easy to find where I have to do it. Without those 2 markers, it may be a little confusing as to where you have to put your stitch. But I think that shows it really well right there. Okay, so we're going to go into the first skip stitch that we skipped and put a triple. And here's the other part. I was like, why is this not working? When you do a triple, you have to yarn over twice. And then when you try to go into the back, your yarn overs are going to start falling off. So here's what I found was the easiest for me. I folded it over and kind of sandwiched it over so it would stay down. Yarn over twice, and then I held those yarn overs with my thumb. And I went into the stitch. Because you want to stay completely behind, I'm going to pull that stitch marker out now so it's not in my way. Yarn over and pull it through. See, and I even lost it there. I didn't hold it tight enough. Yarn over, hold them, go into the stitch, grab the yarn and come back. You should have 4 loops on your hook. Okay. Pull through, pull through. So making the triple isn't hard, it's where you're putting it that can be a little complicated. And now we're going to put a triple in the second skipped stitch. So double yarn over again. I'm going to hold those yarn overs on my thumb. I'm going to go into the stitch, grab the yarn and come back. I should have 4 loops. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. I'm going to pull this out. And then when I unfold it, you've got, here's the first 2 triples we made that we skipped the stitches. They're leaning this direction, and the ones that we put behind are leaning the opposite direction. Okay. Now, the next part of our pattern tells us to skip 2 stitches. Whoops. So here's where we had put the second of our, when we initially put our 2 triples. There's that one, the last one we made. Skip 2, 1, 2, and put 2 more triples. Skip 1, skip 2. But just like we did the first time through, these will be leaning. Once I get through this repeat, I'm going to stop and I'm going to do it again. But if you've got questions, I'm happy to answer them. So now I've done 2 leaning just like we did, and I've got 2 skip stitches in the middle here. I'm going to go ahead and mark them because when you fold the yarn back, it can be hard to see where they are. Okay. So I'm going to mark it. Here's the first one. If you can see them easily, it depends on your yarn, then don't worry about marking them. I just wanted to make sure everybody could get through this easily. Now this set, instead of working behind, we're going to do them in front. So I'm going to fold my 2 triples I just made to the back this time, okay? And all of our work needs to be done in front of those 2 triples. So yarn over twice, I'm going to hold it, and this is a little bit trickier. because you need to go in, but you don't want to go all the way to the other side of those 2 triples. You want to stay in front of those 2 triples. We just want to go under those 2 loops, grab the working yarn and come back, and we have 4 loops. Pull that out, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. There is an inclination to just go through, but now I'm crossing my yarn over the 2 triples I folded to the back. And that's not what the pattern wants you to do. It wants you to stay in front of those 2 triples, only going underneath the 2 loops of the skipped stitch, keeping those original 2 triples out of the way. And for the yarn through, I should have 4 loops, and I did. So it's easier to keep your yarn overs on your hook when you're going into the front, but I think it's a little harder to get your hook into the stitch when you're going to the front. All right, and then the next part of the pattern I'm going to do real quick. It's just 4 double crochets in the next 4 stitches. So here's where I ended with my triples. So I'm going to do a double, and then you'll be able to see the pattern by doing these. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Lay it out. Okay. So we did our 4 double crochets to begin, and then we did 2 triples that lean to the right, and then we did 2 triples that lean to the left that go behind, and then we did 2 triples that again lean to the right, they're behind there, and then we did 2 triples that lean to the left, but these are in front. So you get kind of this symmetrical appearance. Okay, so these 12 stitches here are basically what you're repeating across your row. It's doing this little triple work and then 4 double crochets. So if you wanted to increase your pattern, you could increase it by 12, and this is what you would be repeating. And I'll have that in the notes for you as well. Does anybody have questions before I do it over again so you can see it again? I just want to make sure no one has questions.
No, it'd be good to see it again though.
Okay, good, good. All right. So this time I'm going to do it without the stitch marker so you can see, and then and you can maybe see why I put the stitch markers in, because I found them really helpful. All right, so I did my 4 doubles. Now I'm going to skip 2 stitches and do 2 triples in a row. So 2 yarn overs, skip 2 stitches. Let's triple. 1, 2, and 3. 2 yarn overs. 1, 2, 3. All right. And now I'm going to go behind. So I'm going to fold these triples forward so I can work on the skipped stitches. And if you can see, here's skip stitch number 1, and here's skip stitch number 2. Skip stitch number 1, skip stitch number 2. So I've done this several times so I can see them, but you can see how it would be confusing where they might be. Depending on the color of your yarn, if you've got a lot of variegation or a dark yarn, it might be harder to see those stitches. So feel free to slip a stitch marker in there if you need to. So I'm going to fold that forward. I'm going to double yarn over, 1, 2, and I'm going to hold it with my thumb so I don't lose my yarn overs. I'm going to hold it, and there's my stitch right there. There's the first skip stitch. And I want to get my yarn in the right place. Hold on. Double yarn over. There we go. Grab the yarn and come in. And triple away. And then double yarn over. There's my second skip stitch right there. So that's when you're working behind the triples. And fold it back up. And then skip 2 stitches, 1, 2. And I'm almost hoping I made a mistake on my stitch count so I can, because I did that many, many times. So you can see how you can check for it, but I think I got it right. 2 triples, 1, 2. And before I make the next 2 triples, the pattern should end with 4, you should have 4 stitches left to make 4 double crochets. So I'm going to stop right now and just check, because if I'm off, I don't want to go ahead and fuss with these triples if I have to take it back. And I do have 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces left to end with 4 double crochets. So I know I've done my stitch count right. All right, so now I'm going to be doing my triples in the front. I'm going to push, hold on to my yarn overs. I'm going to push this to the back. And I can see my 2 skip stitches. And I only want to go under the loops of those 2 skip stitches. I want to try to avoid, you have to avoid the other triples so they don't get caught up. And I'm going to show you what it looks like when they do get caught up on this one, and then I'll redo it. So the first time I did it, oh, there's my skip stitch. I went in, I pulled it up, and did my, like, oh, that's not so hard, except that I have completely trapped my triple by going all the way through it and bringing the yarn over the back. So while it looks fine here, when you turn it over, it in fact does not look fine. You can see how you've gone all the way through, and it shouldn't look like that. So I'm going to pull that one out, and I'll do it correctly. I hope that's helpful. I always find it helpful to see how not to do it sometimes, just because I found that that was a natural inclination to do it that way. So I'm going to fold those to the back so I stay away from them. Double yarn over, hold them with my thumb. Just go under the 2 loops of that stitch and make the triple. And then end with 4 double crochets. So that is row 3 of this pattern. Row 4 is doing the exact same thing. Oh, start with a chain 3. 1, 2, 3, and turn. So now I've got the right side facing me. What you're going to end up with, so I've done kind of 1/2 of the butterfly. I've done the lower half here, and what you're going to do is repeat, but because we're doing it on the reverse side, you get the little wings going the other direction, okay? So we're doing the row the same, but just on the reverse side. Chain 3, and then 3 double crochets, starting in the second stitch because you've got the 3 chains as your first stitch. Okay, again, you can put a marker in the 3rd chain because as we work all the way across, our last stitch is going to go into, I'm going to mark it here, into the top of the 3rd chain. It's not going to be in the end of the double. It's the chain 3 that our last stitch will go into. Otherwise, your stitch count will be off. Pull up some of them. And we're going to repeat. It feels a little bit different now that you've already got these triples going, but essentially it's the same. Skip 2 stitches. You're not ever going into chain spaces. You're going underneath both loops of an actual stitch. So this stitch does not require you going into chain spaces at all. Double yarn over, I'm going to hold it with my thumb, skip 2, 1, 2, make 2 triples in a row. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Now I've got my 2 skip stitches that I'm going to do from behind. You always go behind first. So I'm going to fold them forward so that I can look at the 2 skip stitches. There they are from behind. Put my double yarn over, hold it with my thumb. I'm trying to get it good on the camera here, so hold on. There's my first skip stitch. And you got to get your working yarn behind there before you go into the stitch or it won't work. Grab the yarn and come through. I do in fact have 4 loops. All right, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. And repeat. Double yarn over, hold it with my thumb. Go into my second skip stitch, grab the yarn, pull through, hold it back up. And now I can see I've got to skip 2 stitches. Here's where my last triple's coming out of. So 1, 2, and move going in here. So it feels a little different because you're doing triples on top of triples. But it works out fine. And I did find when I did get my stitch count off, it was on this second row of doing the triples or the row 4 of the pattern as you're repeating, because I was missing, because they look a little bit different when you're leaning triples, I had missed a stitch. So just be careful on that row 4 that you're counting your skip stitches correctly. So this time we're going to go in the front. So I'm going to fold them to the back. Here's my 2 stitches right there. Double yarn over, and fold it with my thumb. Just go underneath those. Pull up my yarn. 2, 2, 2. Somebody this morning asked me if you could do this with doubles instead of triples, and you could if you did the rest of the pattern, meaning where you did doubles, if you only did those in singles. I do believe it would work if you have trouble with your triples. But you need this stitch because it leans to be longer than the other stitches. So we just did the reverse now. So you've got that nice little butterfly or bow shape. And now we do 4 doubles in a row. And they should stack up on top of the 4 doubles you did on the previous row. So that's another way to check that you are on track as far as your stitch counts. If you find you're not, these aren't lining up, then you know you're off somewhere. And those do line up. And then you repeat again. I'm going to do it one more time. Skip 2. And I did find because these stitches are taller, it does actually make the work go a little faster. And I found once I got the hang of locating those skip stitches and where to have your working yarn, that it does go pretty quick. Skip stitch number 1. And I'm loving, by the way, this new cotton yarn. There is, and I've ripped this out now 3 times. So I've worked over this yarn now 3 times. There's no splitting or pulling. I think we're really gonna like this cotton. And we're hoping to have this all in the next couple weeks. So in, I think, 50 colors. So I think this is going to be a lot of fun for projects. Another, I know people, we've used the Callista and it can be a little splitty. This is a much tighter spin on this. Double yarn over, skip 2. Just have to locate where I made that last one. So I'm doing it in the right place, which is right there. Skip 1, skip 2. I'm going to go right here. 1, 2, 3. Double yarn overs. 1, 2, 3. And I should have 4 stitches left to do before I do the triples here. 1, 2, 3, and then the top of my chain 3 is 4. So I know my stitch count is right there. All right, this time I'm going to go to the front. So I'm going to fold those to the back. And I found folding them to the back before you do your yarn overs was very helpful. Getting your stitches in the right place. Before I did the yarn overs, I was dropping the yarn overs a lot less. 1, 2, 3. Trying to keep those yarn overs on and folding the yarn over at the same time was a step too far for me. 1, 2, 3, and then 4 doubles. So it begins and ends, the row begins and ends with 4 doubles, and there are 4 doubles in the middle, and 2 sets of these cute little triple butterflies or bows, whatever you want to call them. So there's it finished. And then you go to rows 5 and 6, which are 2 rows of single. And that's it. And then, so this is 1 repeat. After I do the 2 rows of singles, I'll have done the 2nd repeat. And then there are 2 more repeats. So I found it really easy. So I do my 2 rows of triples. I would check off, and then I would do my 2 rows of singles, check off. And I found when I put it down and I picked it up, it was really easy to keep track of where I was. Marking the right side of your pattern with a stitch marker, and then doing the little check off, because as the pattern is written, they just have you repeating rows, repeat row 3 and 4, repeat row 5 and 6. Personally, I found it easier to check off. And then that's the whole block. Are there any questions?
No. So you're going to post a PDF with the video, right?
Yes. So what I'll do is on the page where you can click the video link, there will also be a link that will click you to a PDF with the notes and everything.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and then you'll have this little chart that you can have for yourself.
That'll be good.
The ladies in class today found that really helpful. Just to have it already written out that way. Like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So the repeat is just these 4 rows, and it's 2 rows of the same, 2 rows of the same. So really it's really just 1 row you have to remember, because you don't have to remember how to do a single.
Right.
And it's the same thing. So it does go quickly. And I felt like by the 2nd repeat, I had it down. I didn't even have to look at the pattern anymore to remember what to do, lean forward, lean back. And it makes as soon as you make the stitch after you've done the first repeat, you get it's very clear if you've done it wrong. It's very obvious that it's leaning in the wrong direction. So I just looked at my hands. I've had a puppy staying at my house. Can you tell? I just look, I'm like, God, I've got bruises. I've got nicks.
Oh, geez.
My grand puppy has been at my house this week. So getting all the little love nips. So that's the block. And I think I really wanted that other, and I'm not giving up on that block 19. It might be a bonus class. But but I felt like this, now we can move on with the rest of the blocks in order that we already have them listed. So if you're moving ahead, but I felt like this one was one that would fit in well with the ones that we had already chosen. So
Really pretty.
yeah, it
Yeah,
is really pretty. And I could see this as a, like the back of a sweater or a shawl.
Mm.
Yep.
Done this
Yeah,
in
it's lacy looking. Yeah.
it's lacy, but it's got nice drape to it, and it has
Still
it
has
still
heft.
has some structure. It's not super
Yes.
lacy. So that's my first instinct, like, oh, that would be kind of a pretty as part of a sweater, but I do think it would make a really pretty shawl because it does have some oomph to it. So like I said, that's why I worked out what the repeats would be. So you'll have that information if you want to take that and you can extend it on. So yeah, I thought it was fun. There any other questions? All right.
So the next one is what day?
So I have it written right here.
You know what? Because I don't have it on my calendar.
Yeah, so the next one will be,
Oh, July 1st, wasn't it? Something different.
no, it's not, it will be July, it's block 24 will be the next one, and it will be, hold on. I have a schedule here somewhere. No, it's in the, I need to stop the recording.